Let's make a big announcement. All right.
Hello,
Well,
Natalie. How are you? Oh, she doesn't have headset on. Got it.
has to get set up.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, sorry for being late. There's an issue with a bunch of areas here in Bedford with no electricity,
Oh,
so
I heard that on CC this morning.
sorry about that.
That's okay, but it does mean you gave away your secret that you're not actually at the lake right now.
That's Keji Maku. That's a picture of Keji Makujic. Those are my two daughters there at
Oh,
Keji
lovely.
Beach.
That land acknowledgement. I feel like that's the best kind of land acknowledgement. Just have it right there in your background. Celebrate that.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us from wherever you are. Even if your background is your pillow, I'm still so happy to have you here.
Yeah. This is, I just want to let you know, we sent out 2 reminders. This is very strange that there are only 8 people here. We're usually around, at least around 40, right?
Oh,
Yeah. That's
40.
why I haven't been like, let's get started, because I'm like wondering if people are gonna join.
This is very strange. Like every week we've had, hold on.
Didn't have an
You
email.
didn't I sent a reminder again last night. Hold on, I can send it right now again in case people are looking for it.
These are the people who went digging. Look at this. A couple people saying, I didn't receive it, I didn't get one. But when you're sending things,
Yeah, we sent a reminder out on Tuesday and I sent one out yesterday. Hold on.
divine timing. It's all good with me. Thank you, Christopher and Karen Lynn and others who I think have been offering some insights and guidance on the communication. Natalie, did the participants also get the resources that were part of this module sent to them?
I'm sorry.
Did participants get parts of the materials that were provided for this module? Any of the resources?
That you had sent?
Well, yeah, the things that were part of Brenda's package for this module.
Hold on. You know what? I don't think I sent those. I'm sorry. I can send that now. When we decided back 2 weeks ago that we were going to do the session today, we immediately launched because we had to change the dates.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
had already set those. Sorry about that.
I'm just thinking that if you're, I just was trying to catch you before you sent another reminder.
Okay, I'm going to go right now and resend everything.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so I'll be away for a sec. Hold.
Well, it's almost 9:10, so the session is recorded, so I guess we should just get her going for
All
now.
part of the getting going. It's all good.
Yeah. So, hi everybody. My name's Carmen. I'm the Special Events Coordinator with Junior Achievement Nova Scotia, and I'm here today to introduce you to Julianne Meisner as our facilitator for our last session of #adulting. And this session is going to be focusing on workplace readiness. She is an experienced personal development and community engagement professional and coach. Julianne has been involved with JA since she was a teenager in company program and has a wealth of knowledge about finding work, resumes, cover letters, and all the other important pieces to help you find and get a job. She is presently working with the Mentoring Plus strategy in the Annapolis Valley.
Beautiful. Thank you for that, Cameron. Welcome everybody. And I will say a few additional pieces to that and then also welcome Paula Huntley, who's here. She's a mentor in our Mentoring Plus program here in the Valley, also a longtime business professional, lots of experience in this area and a real passion for working with people, helping them find their way. So I feel really blessed to have her also joining us for a little bit this morning to meet you and share her wisdoms and insights. So Paula, thanks for coming on board as well.
Thank you for having me.
And so to the group, I'm going to admit I am used to getting to see at the very least a dot that recognizes that there's other humans out there in the Zoom land. But so I just say that with the invitation that if you feel so inclined, no judgment, please feel free to turn on your cameras and include your communications in the nonverbals and facial expressions and all those things that I find useful and beneficial. But again, it's your comfort level, so you don't have to do that at all. I just wanted to open that invitation and set maybe different standards. I'm not sure what you were set as in the other sessions, but it's nice when we're starting to talk about this phase of getting out into the world to offer that, because we are, wherever we go, we are who we are, and any version of that is valid and valued, and I'm happy to be here with you all. So I want to be able to also connect by chat. I do not mind being interrupted. Communication flow is much better than being told, and so please, whether that's sidebar conversation that you're using the chat for, things that catch your attention, curiosities that you have, please feel free to use that chat bar on the side as well. And Carmen has been kind enough to suggest that she'd be able to share the screen when there's some presentation pieces. We might go off and on from sharing that presentation, just because I don't think necessarily that all of it is something that you need to have right in front of you while we're chatting. And I am hoping that some of you are going to be able to get information for some tools and activities as we go through the day as well. So I would love to start by asking in the chat or by mic if anybody wanted to share what they have as an experience, maybe just asking when did you have your first job? Has anybody gotten a paid job? That can be cash paid, whatever it is. When did you start working? What would you identify that as? 14, I see. Good job. When I was 14 as well. Geez Louise, you want to share? Feel free to include what the kind of job was, your age, and the kind of job you were doing. Started at 16. Good old Tim Hortons. Yes. Makes a huge difference. They're just like, there you go. Tim Hortons and McDonald's, there's like gold standards in employment skill development in some of those franchise employers. So they look good on a resume. Awesome. Any other examples that we want to see pop up there? All right. Babysitting, yes. So many skills coming from that. So what I really like to look at when we're talking about this topic is that we're thinking about the kinds of things that maybe since we were young, things that we got interested in doing early in our childhood, early in our choices about what we did as our first jobs, early in our lemonade stands or other entrepreneurial ventures, that those are giving us inclinations about maybe some of the things that have always been our passion. I call it our justs, the things that we do that actually are part of who we are. We call it, they seem easy to us. So we say, oh, I just started with babysitting, or I just worked at Tim Hortons. And yet those things are things that are good and easy for you and may not be easy for others. So I'm giving you that as a little clue, because when we're trying to sell ourselves, we don't remember to say the things that are really easy for us. And one of the best ways to start giving ourselves some confidence and credit is to notice what it is that we say is easy, what we call our justs. So, all right, we'll go over a little bit about some of these technical things, cover letters and resumes and such, and mostly looking at that, how we sell ourselves in that inventory of skills. So, perfect. Carmen, we can keep going to the next slides if you don't mind doing that for me. We can skip through these. There's probably a couple. If you look at the slide, you go quickly through to the ones that don't look like they're written for me. Yeah, keep going there. Just we'll see a nice bright screen come up in a few more slides through. All right. So those are a few things that we want to talk about. And here's the skills inventory. Thanks, Carmen. We'll stay here. Soft skills, probably people know about these. The idea of, some people call them 21st century skills or hidden curriculum and things that really take a little bit more nuance to learn, versus hard skills, which are the things that we can maybe learn in a textbook. We can read about them. We might get some hands-on the job training on them. They're not quite as nuanced. And so what I'd love to ask about when it comes to this is which jobs, what's something from a job you've done that's a hard skill that you think you have skill in, and also sharing something about maybe a soft skill that you identify as already being strong in. And you can have that conversation in the chat or piping into the dialogue just by turning on your mic. Somebody tell me a little bit about that. Is it kind of a hard skill that maybe you learned? Pick on the people that had already been participating. But if you think back to one of your first skills, first jobs, maybe it's like Tim Hortons, the babysitting, some of those examples, something you were doing when you were 14, a lemonade stand. What would be a hard skill? From those notes that are there on that example, what would be a hard skill that you might have learned from doing one of those early day jobs? Yeah, so the CPR training that you got and being a fast typer, these are great examples. Yes. Words per minute. I was lucky enough, I got 99% in my typing class back in, might have been the 90s when I took a typing course, and I was quite proud of myself. It's been a good skill that I've been able to demonstrate over the years. It's not necessarily the one skill that's going to get you a job or keep you a job, but it's something you have in your pocket that certainly helps along the way. Great example. Oh, thank you, Natalie. I appreciate that. It's nice to have those resources. Natalie's just saying that she has sent the package of resources so that you have them. Those are JA materials that I think are just, they have resource. That means that you also probably have this presentation and maybe the speaker notes, which has the links to resources, which is great. So I hope you can make use of those. Miss Paula, what about a thought from you about a skill that you would see from early jobs that you might have been applying then that has still been useful all this time throughout your career?
Sure. My first job when I was 16, I was a grocery cashier. So one of the things, and it was back in the day, it wasn't yesterday, so there was no computer registers for sure, but speed of running the machine was important. But what I found was I learned more on soft skills that I really paid attention to, because a lot of those things, you know, it's hard to teach those. They have to be a natural piece that's in us. And I was allowed really to show that. And ironically, I was an introvert. So I couldn't say hi to people. It was ironic that I took that job because I knew I needed to work. But the soft skills are what carried me to be successful as, you know, one of their best cashiers that they had apparently. So that's one thing. So I just want to say, never underestimate those pieces in any role. And as I looked at some of the comments, some of the first jobs, babysitting, for example, and, you know, a lot of times over my 40 years of interviewing, sometimes that is the first job they've had. And people don't know how to speak to that. They say, well, I've only babysat. Well, to me, when I think about being a babysitter, I think about, first of all, parents just entrusted their most prized possession to you. There's the first thing. So, you know, you're going to learn a lot from that. You're going to learn about running a household, really, timeliness of what their habits are. You are entrusted with their home and being safe and knowing what to do if there's an emergency, and being organized. There's so much under babysitting that comes, and I always thrive on that conversation when I'm interviewing, because there's so much about the person that you can get to know.
I love that, Paula. Thank you so much. I think that if you haven't already, I suggest to the students in the crowd that if you haven't sat down and thought about a job that, like babysitting, like mowing the lawn, like the household chores, like it can be any job that you were responsible for. So you don't have to think of a job only as paid employment, especially people who are community minded and volunteers, kind-hearted, involved in their school, academically motivated, and therefore, you know, really putting focus and attention onto some extracurriculars that you've made your priority. All of those count as taking on a responsibility and taking on a job, right? And so the job is when you say it is, I'm putting myself in the position of responsibility to getting that done. Somebody else is expecting some responsibility on me to do it. And take that example, whichever one you want to grab, and do what Paula just described. Have a conversation with somebody, or, you know, just mapping it out for yourself. Think about what skills you've had, because what Paula just pointed out is hard skills, like the cash register itself, often are skills that change over time, right? I didn't learn how to type with my thumbs when I learned to type my words per minute, right? But really, that is just as valuable as skill now. Whereas the soft skill of effectively communicating, regardless of what mode of communication I'm using, that's the soft skill that allows me to be transferring from typing on the keyboard to typing with my thumb. So give that as a little hint from one of those takeaways. Go ahead, Paula. What else do you want?
Well, the other example you had talked about is like lawn mowing. Okay, first of all, that job is not for everybody. I'll be the first to admit that I'm not very good at it. However, let's say it is your first job and you're diligent at your neighbor's yard. Every Monday and Thursday, you show up on time. Now that neighbor starts to tell other neighbors how dependable you are. Then all of a sudden, somebody else, Mrs. Smith down the road, would like to book you for Wednesdays. Okay, so by the time you've done this for 2 months, you all of a sudden, how did I manage to get 4 clients? That's amazing. So now look back on what you've learned. Time management, right? There's the big thing. And as a soft skill, it shows your flexibility, your communication to the neighbors. And then maybe down the road, all that you've learned, what if you became an entrepreneur? And what if you opened up your own horticultural business? And you can always you can never unlearn what you've learned. You might forget every once in a while because if it's not in practice, but you don't unlearn it. So you can always move those skills into when you're 16 or 26. It doesn't matter.
Yep, or 62.
Right.
Yeah. Not that I know anybody in anybody's ages, just to clarify. I'm not calling out people's ages, I say. But I think that the important thing too to think about when we're describing these, so we're talking about soft skills and we're also talking about transferable skills. And if you are feeling like you're at a transition from jobs that perhaps were positions for financial kind of stability, a little bit of extra pocket money, you're saving up to go to school, maybe you've been doing jobs up till now that had perhaps an entry level kind of level of responsibility, and you've been prioritizing your academic career and the elements around that, then now you might be starting to look at summer employment, work placements, and getting to take positions that are cooperatives or related to the career that you're interested in. Those could start to look forward as what you need to think about in terms of transferable skills, which is something that I did somewhere else is now going to be relevant to help me get this next job, or to show that I'm going to be able to do a job that I've never actually done before. And it can be less nerve-wracking to go into new positions when you know you've learned things from other places and you deserve to give yourself some credit for them. So I wanted to offer that, and we can go to our next slide. Does anybody have, between that one and our next slide, because our next slide is just going to break those soft skills into a little bit more detail about what employers want. So if we move to that next slide, I'll open it up again to conversation. If anybody wants to share questions or thoughts about the kinds of things that somebody would be looking for, or how to pitch it, how you might describe those soft skills based on what your experience has already been. Does anybody want to ask a question or use an example and discuss it with the group? I'd be happy to see that.
I can
Don't
speak
play
to
with the
some.
hand raised, you silly lady. Just do it. Just
Okay.
interrupt. I already said you could do that.
I know, for sure. Okay, so thank you. What employers are looking for? Well, I, as an employer who worked for large, we call it big box. So it could be Winners Home Sense, Staples Business Depot, large companies that do a lot of hiring all the time. So one of the things that I always was, first of all, I was always being proactive in hiring, because you never know when things are going to change. So when I would call people in for an interview, yes, I'm looking for communication, creativity, but what I'm looking for is examples. So tell me you're a problem solver. That's a great, because that's not for everybody. Give me an example of, what you would do as a problem solver. Now, if this is, you've never had a job, it's a little bit more to think about, but in problem solving, think about start at home. Think about there. Is there something that you probably help in the household that mom and dad depend on you to give the schedule to? So whether, let's say you have a brother or sister, they have soccer every Thursday. So guess what? It's my role by Wednesday, all the gear needs to be cleaned, packed, organized and ready to go. It sounds trivial to you because you do it all the time, but let's face it, a lot of people can't do that because their plate is
like your sibling, for example, since obviously you're doing it for them.
Well, who knows? And maybe they're a little younger and they just don't know how to grasp it yet, right?
That's right.
So there's one thing. Flexibility. What does that mean? Well, first of all, I always ask, are you on any sports teams? You don't have to be, the big hockey player through Canada. Has nothing to do with that. But what type of participation do you do in the community? So if you give an example, like, how do you think you're flexible? Well, if you're working with 10 people and you're showing up every week or weekly, whatever the schedule is, first of all, that's a sign of flexibility, because you have to be a participant in that team, but you're also going to school and you're also doing whatever else you need to do to have a life, I call it, and be happy with what you're doing. So examples are very important.
Yes. We're going to have some strategies as we go along in our resources as well to help you unpack ways that you might build these examples. Because I think coming into conversations, Paul is offering that behind the scenes to reassure you that most managers, most people who are there looking to hire and are in your interview want to see you do well. They want to see the best version of you, and they're there to support that. If you're getting a stone cold version of that, that's only because they're putting on a poker face, maybe feel like they have to do that for keeping the even board across the table. But they are all humans. They want the good person in the job doing it, and they want you to tell them the best version of you. And so really, even if you're not getting the nonverbal that says that to you during an interview, trust that that's what they really mean. And so if they're asking questions to dig in, to give these examples, that's because they really want to hear whatever it is that you've got. And sometimes just being able to translate the story is going to be a great example of some of these soft skills.
The one thing that you just said is important, and every employer puts it on their plate when they're teaching their managers. Storytelling is important, because you could have been somewhere last night and there was a group and you're telling about the story, and all of a sudden the picture is in our head of where you are, what you're learning, how you took part. It's never just about, I went to a barbecue. There's always a little bit something more that we probably need to look a little harder on to talk about ourselves.
Exactly. Love that. It's a thank you to Carrie Lynn too here in the chat. She's giving us some examples, taking a minute to unpack an example about her adaptability as one of the skills she pulled out, and seeing that from other work experiences. And if you've got previous career experience, lots of mature students in post-secondary, that too, you know, might be changing different career industries, but your ability to show that the skills from where you've been are going to be applicable in new roles. It also shows the employer a uniqueness that you're going to bring that other applicants won't bring, right? So even if you have lots of experience from the same industry that you're applying for, it's great to be able to pull examples from other areas of your life and your work. And so again, I encourage you to think about the justs that might be things that you do automatically and not give yourself credit for. But there is a little activity resource that might help you reflect on this. And so the next slide invites you, that's my cue for Cameron, the next slide invites you to open up that activity number 1. It's a self-analysis. And this is one of the resources that just get emailed to you. So if you're able to multitask, you'll be able to open up an activity page that came in the package that just gets sent to you. And this one looks like an Excel document. Admittedly, that might make it difficult for some of you to open. I don't know if you're all working in Microsoft, but this one is called Activity Self-Analysis. Anybody just in the comments able to tell me if they have access to that, or if anybody definitely doesn't have access to that? We could probably share the screen and look at it that way as well as an alternative.
Attached to the email, I only got one that says rational decision making.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad that you will be able to do some rational decision making.
Julianne, that was the only document that I saw in the email that I got.
Okay. Let's see. They'll have all kinds of great things then. What can maybe I will share this one, a set of resources as well, just in case, so that they have these. What is the email address I can send to you? Just so even if you're not able to send it right now, you can send it to them after. Able to tell me?
Sure, I'll type it in the chat box.
You're probably in my previous notes if I just start to type it in. But Cameron, this is in the set that I sent to you this morning. Are you able to switch to share that, or should I do that?
Let me see real fast.
Awesome. See, there are examples of multitasking in real time. We do. Go us. All right. I'm sending that to you with very little intro, Natalie, and so that you have those resources. And thank you, Cameron. Okay, so it will be way better when you actually have one of these for yourself to look at, but we can zoom in so we don't have to see all that white page on this side. This activity offers you a chance to think about some of the skills that might be soft skills. They might be skills that you're really proud of already having, or ones that you would like to have. And Cameron, are you able to do a zoom in on that one a little bit on your screen, or is that not so? Yeah. Great. Maybe even more. All right. So one heading is interpersonal skills, and if you're able to see that clearly, I don't know, we might need to zoom in even a little bit more to get a few of them on the screen at once, big enough for people to see. There you go. If we can just look at the first set of that, and as many as show up. That's okay. Take a peek there. They're numbered. So if you want to just everybody look through that set and pick one that to you feels like something that you have some skill in. Interpersonal skill is the relationship between people and your understanding of that relationship, your ability to navigate the relationship between people. And so this is probably the most valuable skill in life because, I mean, that's not true. It's just my perspective because I like humans. So people who like humans enjoy these skills. Working in a public service environment, then these skills will come in handy, but also working in collaboration with colleagues, right? Your internal customers. These skills are going to be really valuable. And so if anybody wants to just offer from what they see in there, a skill that they would say is one of their strengths. Just pick one and you can retype it in the chat, one of your personal strengths that you can say as you see it written there. You're like, wait a second, that's like a skill that would be worth mentioning. Demonstrating empathy. Yes. Oh, Paula, you're an expert at that. Thank you. What else have we got there? You can put the number on the side as well, number 12. Awesome. Being flexible, respectful, and be open to and supportive of the thoughts, opinions, and contributions of others in the group. Collaborating. Yes. Seeking out those other people and wanting to hear those conversations. Understanding and working within the dynamics of a group. Yes, because we've had to work as a team. Yes, that is so important. Pull from any of your teamwork experiences and see how the collaboration brought you to your final goal. Anytime that somebody claims they did it all by themselves, a manager is going to hear that you weren't paying attention to the other people around you. Providing feedback in a constructive and considerate manner. What a skill. Good. Selling. Yes. Persuasiveness and the ability to put a positive spin on anything. That's quite a skill set. Now, we're going to go to the next section. If you don't mind, Cameron, just doing that, scroll down a little bit and we'll see some problem solving examples. There is the next piece. Now, of course, these are going to build on each other, right? So anything with soft skills, it's just like hard skills. If you take, I can use a hammer and I can hold a nail and I have good hand-eye coordination, this is the pieces that are going to make me good at, being a carpenter perhaps and keeping all my digits. But it is a combination of a set of skills. And so you'll see problem solving skills usually are making us better at our interpersonal skills. They're packaging together. So in this next set, I'm going to offer you a suggestion. Some of these words, and this is why I'm glad you're going to have these resources, they're great starter sentences on resumes. So if you're writing a resume and you want to tell somebody about the kind of work you did in a workplace or the kind of skills you bring, if you're bringing a skills-based resume approach to writing these out, putting these in with a formula of how good you are at it, how much you've done it, or why you've done it can be a way to start building out one skill into a story that's still just one sentence and able to fit on a resume. So that's a little tip that I have. If anybody wants to pull from this list and suggest it, I'm just going to give you that formula here in the chat as well. And feel free, if anybody is so inspired, to put on a microphone and tell us a little bit about how they might package up one of these examples into a sentence for a resume. So how good you are at it, how much you've done it, or why you had to do it. And you can build a sentence around that. Does anybody want to try one? We see listed there under problem solving skills. We've seen those for a second. Maybe Cameron, if you don't mind just scrolling a little bit more, we'll see some of the communication ones as well, and then people can choose from those. Creative skills are there as well. Then you want to pull one out, see if they can turn it into a sentence for a resume. Skill description. Paula, do you want to practice one for us?
I'd love to.
Yes.
So one of the ones that I really like to see is the tracing problems to sources. So it sounds like a mouthful, really, but it's kind of actually simple when you think about it. So here's my example. When I worked for my neighbor, I noticed that, I want to get the right words, sorry.
That's
So
all
that's
good.
just, when I worked for my neighbor, that's my story. As I did multiple roles in lawn mowing, one of the issues was always seeding. My role was to find the resources that I could suggest to my fellow neighbors. So as an employer, I would think they went to the root cause. What is causing this issue? And they didn't leave it alone. So that also then turns around the communication, right? So it wasn't just about the listening and the conversing with individuals. They sought out the issue, whatever it was. They tried to find a way to correct it on their own, and then they could make suggestions to the employer about how to fix it. Now it's in their hands of moving forward. What can I do for you? I know that sounds like a lot, but that's really how it is.
Yeah, and these are the starting points to remind you of your stories as well, right? And so what Paula just gave the example, she just pulled back to whether it's true or not. Paula, you said it was hard work and not your cup of tea for lawn mowing. So this could be a story that she's just returning back to as an example, right? Once you've identified an area of your work experience, your life experience, then you see, you know what, actually, I was kind of shining then. I was a good version of me. There's a lot within that example that I could keep referring back to. When you're in an interview phase of your conversation with employers, having already unpacked for yourself and really practice the story and the elements of the story, not so that you can rehearse it and say it once upon a time till the end, right? You just want to know the nuances of the story so that you can keep coming back to that story and you're remembering about it. Your lived experience is going to bring those examples back up to you when the kind of question that an interviewer is asking requires you to pull up a sample from, sometimes they word questions like, give me an example of a time when, ... behavioral interview questions and situational questions. And so that is really helpful. You know that story, that life experience of doing your side gig when you're a kid as a lawnmower is packed full of examples of your skills. Also being able to kind of develop some of those examples into side stories so that you know how you would describe how you handled a conflict in that story, how you recognized a problem and solved it, how you dealt with a difficult customer, how you, demonstrated good time management. Managers in interviews are going to be wanting that soft skill list that was mentioned. And so you can have one really good experience spans over a period of your employment or your commitment. It's a relationship on a sports team, and keep coming back to that same story isn't going to look like she only have that one story, because you're going to unpack it and show how many different examples you can pull from that. And really, the demonstration is about how you handle situations. The situation is always going to change. They may never ask you to mow a lawn, but your ability to handle the conflict, figure out what the real problem was, shows your personality and the way that you demonstrate these skills.
One of the things, and I apologize for cutting in there, but one of the things that as you speak, I always try to tell people, or ask them, how well do you know your resume? So have you just typed it up because, oh my gosh, I have to have a summer job and I need to get out? Well, did you actually read what was in there? Because by the time you go through section by section, you should actually be pretty impressed with yourself because this is a brag time, right? This is about you. You talk about you. Because if the employer is smart, when you walk into that room, they should turn over your resume and not be focused on it, and they should let you do the sell of you. So if you don't know what's in that resume and you can't speak to it, you're not ready. That's a huge learning tip. And why I say that is because, let's face it, most of us are not good at talking about us. We go day by day, we do our thing, and someone says, so tell me about yourself. There's silence, mic drop. That's it. So that's why I say, how well do you know your resume and being prepared? Thanks.
So true, so true. Thank you, Paula. And Cameron, just so that we can see some other examples of that, maybe you can scroll through some of those other headings so that people can see themselves in other parts of that skill list. So we have leadership skills. Remember that you do not need to have been at the top. I freeze when I have to talk about myself. Oh my gosh, absolutely, right? But the question is way too broad. You know everything about everything you've ever done in your life. And when somebody says, tell me about yourself, you're thinking like, in what context? What version of me? Where do you want me to start? So absolutely. Paula, yes, I know that you're just here with us for this bit of time. Thank you so much for your contributions. It's so valuable. If there are other questions for Paula, I have a good pipeline access to her. So I would be happy to share information about her and make her available to you, or get questions to her in the future if you're curious.
Sure. And I'd love to come back anytime, for sure.
Well, thanks, Paula. That's awesome.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Take care. So I was just speaking to that leadership concept, is that you can really recognize yourself in leadership positions based on how you step up to the plate. I'm not actually a baseball player, but I am a baseball mom. At what times do you take on that responsibility and say, I know that this is something that I need to do for me, or this is something that other people need, and I'm going to step up to doing it. And so leadership skills are in all of us, and we just have different leadership styles. So all of these are skills that people can perhaps have some natural affinity to, but when they are deep set skills and talents, then we can hone them and exponentially get better at them. But everybody can learn these. Soft skills are harder to teach because people don't practice teaching them, not because they're too hard to learn. They are sometimes the things that we assume people pick up on just by interacting with others in the world. But the reality is, we don't all have people that are great role models of all the things growing up. And so it doesn't necessarily just come to us by osmosis of the people we're around. Sometimes these are skills that we have to go out and hone for ourselves. And your interest in honing them will be the difference in being able to make huge progress. So I just reassure you that if you look at this list when you have some time with it on your own and you see them as areas that you would like to further develop, opposed to feeling that you already have strength in, that there is always ways to get better, even if you're already calling yourself an expert in these areas. Once you're an expert in them, then teaching them to others is going to just further improve your skill in any of those areas. All right, do you want to just scroll down again a little bit more? I think there's probably another section or two for them just to see positive attitudes and behaviors and their adaptability that we had talked about. Any others here that you wanted to pull up as a point of reference or a question that anybody would like to ask about how you might put one of these examples on a resume, or how you would turn them into talking points when you're selling yourself for employment, entrepreneurship, or in your career trajectory. Maybe on a date for that matter, quite frankly. It's all the same skills. Any questions that people have about this, these samples? And Natalie, not to be bombarded with emails, but is this something that they'll also be able to get? Was there enough difference of resources in this package that I?
Sure, yes, if you send that to me, we'll,
Oh, I think I did. It didn't go to you?
no, I'm saying if it's sent to me, yes, I can make sure that they get it.
Yes, I think I already sent it to you.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect. Okay, good. All right. So how many people, can we do it as like raise a hand? Does everybody know how to do the hand raise on the buttons? Raise a hand if you already have a resume written. Can you show a raise a hand if you already have a resume in one hand? Can I tell how many people have a hand raised? Yes, one person has a hand. Good job, you're on top of it. Yes. You can put up your hand even if you've only written the resume to apply for school and you're thinking, gracious, it's not, please don't make me show it, because I am not going to ask you now to share the screen and show me your resume. So there's no accountability to your answer. It's only a self-reflection. Have you done the first step of trying to put yourself on paper in some format? I get about half the group saying yes to that. Good job. Keep your hand up and add your hand if you know how. Maybe I can actually explain how to do hands up. That might be a challenge for people. If you click the reactions smiley face at the bottom, there's a raise hands there that you can do. Keep your hand up and add a hand if you feel like you had to describe yourself in order to get into university. Did you have to do an application, a little self-reflection piece when you applied for university? These are all, thank you. That's great. Okay, so those are all ways that we have started to write resumes. And I think that giving yourself credit for those is really important. Also, to keep those as a frame of reference over time. So you can click that hands off again if you want to at this point. And Carmen, I'm going to suggest that we go back to the PowerPoint presentation. And if we could actually go to slide 13, I'm going to skip past cover letters here for a minute, and that's something that we can go back to afterwards. We're going to go to slide 13 on that PowerPoint presentation. And just skip through it if that's the best way, that's fine. You're not missing anything, I promise. Is to start thinking about resumes that you have written, whether it was that you had a application form that you filled in, a personal bio that you wrote, maybe you started a little portfolio because you've been keeping track of things that you've done in your life. Maybe somebody at home has kept a shoebox of your accomplishments. Maybe looking back through your social media feed, you actually see that you've captured great moments by taking selfies and pictures with friends along the way of your accomplishments. Those are all versions of this bank of resume info that you can use going forward. And I went to the community college in Nova Scotia early in my post-secondary education experience, and was already familiar with using portfolios from my co-op in high school. So I'm not sure if it was just the stage and age, was the kind of the cool thing to do at the time that we had. Everybody was recommending that you have a professional portfolio, a big binder of all the things that you've done, kept together with a little self-reflection about what they spoke to about your skills. So it might not be as popular now. Certainly employers are not necessarily going to be asking in all industries for a professional portfolio, especially early on. But I do recommend some version of a shoebox of your accomplishments, or a binder with sleeves, or a flash drive if you can remember to keep adding to it, that does keep all of your accomplishments over time. Because what you have accomplished already and what you're going to accomplish in the next 10 years are going to be equally valuable sometime in the future. And what I find is a really helpful way to, we talk both about like, what are we going to talk about ourselves? What things do I even bother to mention? Who am I to think that I'm qualified for this job that I saw in the ads that I'm interested in? Going back over old examples can really help focus you in on a reminder about the things that you have done. And, if, for example, this morning when I was introduced with my bio about having done junior achievement since high school, that's not something that I think to mention at every interview, nor is it always relevant. But sometimes it really is worth bringing up. Sometimes talking about what I did in junior achievement in high school and actually showing a continuity of a commitment to a nonprofit organization in the province is really valuable. And if I didn't give credit to what I had been doing back in high school, I wouldn't be able to tell that whole story. And so I encourage you to start collecting those things and to find a way that you can honor them and protect them. Some way of keeping track of it. And a resume should include some of these things that are listed. You can start to pull together some of these things. If you already have a resume, by all means, have sections that are related to these different topics. Also, I recommend having what I call a bank resume, which is that you have a section for all of these and you're typing it in, you're writing it out, you're describing your skills in these areas, you're adding to it even though the list looks really long. But that isn't the only one that you have. You use that, I call it like a bank, the same way as your savings account would be at a bank, that you can draw from it. It's like you've got it as your filing cabinet, and then you can pull from it specific things that might be a good fit for one job that you're applying for or another. And that way you're not tailoring a resume to the next job and losing track of the things that aren't relevant to this job but might be relevant to the next job you apply for. So I really encourage you, some people are going to tell you, make sure that your resume is not more than 1 page. Make sure that your resume is never more than 2 pages. The difference between what you're doing so that you keep track of what you've done, so that your references, versus what you're going to show as a product to one particular employer and what it is that they are going to be interested in seeing, is something that you can start to hone over time. And yet don't ever discredit all the previous skills that you have just because one particular employer doesn't need to hear about them right now. So I just want to have that little bit of a disclaimer before we go into examples of what 1-page resumes look like, because it may be that right now everything you've done feels like it fits on one page, but over time you keep track of all of those things, and they will start to grow. And I don't want you to feel like you have to only ever give credit to 1 page worth of your experience. So, can I hear from the chat a particular question about the nuances of resumes? So I saw most people said yes, some degree of having had a resume. What's a question that you have about what to include in a resume, or how to describe it, or when to use it? Is there any resume specific curiosities and questions, maybe about some of these topics, that you can put in the chat, just so that I know kind of where you're at and what information would be most valuable for you to have? Oh, good question. Yeah. So under honors and awards, I think, first of all, these are example sections, right? So you might say, that feels very prestigious, or that feels a little pompous. That doesn't fit with the experiences that I've had, the ways that we get recognized in the areas of work that I have done. Maybe you're a really active committee member. Maybe honors and awards isn't the description that gets used in the kind of work that you've done in the past. So maybe for you, you might say, this is a place to write the term recognitions as your title. And actually, I even changed the subject titles and some of those key headers based on the kind of work that I'm applying to. So sometimes the descriptor can change as well, depending on what kind of creative license you want to take. But it would be appropriate to put in here that you had that you got a scholarship, that you achieved, maybe a team that you were a part of achieved a high standard in accomplishment. Yeah, so it says, like, would you apply sport awards? I think absolutely. I probably wouldn't put every participation medal I've ever had, but if your team made it to provincials, or if it was a really hard win, whatever that looks like for you, like a really hard won accomplishment or a real sense of pride, you want to put it on there because you want it to trigger that story, right? So if you took a sense of honor and if you felt proud of the accomplishment, then it fits under there, right? So that's one thing that I would recommend putting in there. It can, of course, sometimes you get certificates for participation. You could put some things in there if they feel unique that maybe you don't otherwise, maybe you got a 100% on a food handler's exam and you were told you were the only one that ever got 100% in the community. Maybe that's an accomplishment that you want to mention. It would go under certifications, but maybe there's a sense of honor or reward to it that you want to break out and put in that area. If you're getting some of your academic honors or awards, you could put them there. I see a question about like how to keep it short, and somebody did comment that they were able to keep it to 2 pages, but I know it can be very tricky. Generally, going back in time is only to keep it relevant. So it's not so much about relevance, because I can say only go back 5 years, but the very best job that you had that was most relevant to what you want to apply for is something that you did 8 years ago. Well, of course, that's the thing that you need to mention. So the idea of having a bank resume and a tailored resume is then that you're able to actually choose which things should I pull forward. Still, employers like to see, that chronological. They don't want to see necessarily a huge gap in time where it looks like were you just not doing any? Did you fall off the face of the earth? You might want to say, during a period of time I was doing a certain area of study, but this is my areas of experience. What I then do in these headings is I might say something like relevant experience as the heading, and that way I give a clue to the reader that I have tailored this so that I'm giving them content that's most relevant to the application that I am applying for to them. And that shows even just the industry relevant experience would be one of the things that I would suggest. That sort of answers your how to keep it to short, maybe, and how far back you would go. The other thing that I find about keeping it the right side, like right length, is being creative about your use of the document space. So some people are super creative and how that they may lay out space, and some might be typing in a Word document and making a fairly long document just because they're writing full sentences and paragraphs. So definitely use bullet points instead, and organize, even subcategorizing your information so that you are giving snippets. A resume is supposed to show that you meet the qualifications from the job ad to get you in to the interview. Once you're in the interview, that's when you get to tell all the stories. They'll know to ask you certain stories based on what's on your resume. So don't worry about not being able to write the whole story out on the resume. Resume should just be kind of like an index, a highlights. I sometimes use a highlight section at the top of a resume or to a creative side of a resume in that prime real estate space. That I say, you look at a document, you only have a few seconds with a viewer that they're going to scan through that and look for something that catches their interest. So take everything that's in your resume, find a little key highlight section, and that way you can pull up what's most relevant but may be buried into your second page back up to the top of the resume so people can see it. And yeah, manage your space by finding the way that you're going to express it. You shouldn't have to take out key points. You just might have to get creative about how you describe them. Sometimes maybe combining them with something else so that one line on your resume tells them about a few aspects of your skills. Any other questions specifically about resumes, format and content that I can speak to that would be helpful? There are some fun ways to create your resume as well. What would be your go-to way of creating a resume? What would you use as a way of creating a resume if it was time to get a resume ready for applying for kind of your career focused positions, whether it's a summer internship, student summer placement work, or post-graduation? How would you format your resume? You can use a word processor. Do you have other tools and applications that you might use? Use MS Docs, yeah. Anybody else have strategies besides a Word document that you might use? Has anybody ever used Canva? Are you familiar with Canva as a tool?
I do have Canva, but one of the things that I've used, you know, the note section on my cell phone, sometimes just as a start, I find that, excuse me, I find that sometimes I'm thinking about things, you know, I'm doing random things like in the car or something, and my husband is driving or whatever. And then when it's time to write something, I'm like, oh, I don't remember this, or this. But then I can go back to my notes and I'm like, oh, this, and this, because sometimes you get overwhelmed when you're trying to pull all the pieces together. And the way that my mind works, all the pieces you talked about, like Facebook, you know, the history, whatever, my mind starts thinking, oh, I did this, I did that, I did, oh, here's the note in my phone where I could, because I find that, like you said, you don't always remember what you've done. And that could be the valuable thing that you could add, especially if you do not have a lot of formal work experiences yet. So I use that. Note, I have used Canva as well before for different things, but I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. I appreciate that perspective. As you were describing, Google Keep came to mind as well. Now, I'm saying all these things. I promise you, I have no affiliations to any of them. They might be the worst ones in the world. I'm only giving you examples so that you can go dig in for ones that feel better. So I use that disclaimer. Google Keep was something that a student showed me a couple of years ago that I found super valuable. It's just a Chrome extension, but the thing that I find really valuable is that it's both on my desktop and on my cell phone, and I can add images to it. I can write notes to it. I can tag and add from perhaps websites that I've gone to. And so if you created that with the intention, or kept one file of it specifically about things that I've done, things that I'm thinking about that are reflections of me, kind of my career portfolio for your own notes, that can be helpful if you trust and use Google, to which you can have your own opinion, but I'm not imposing that. Because it might be that, you see your sports team got mentioned in a local newsletter, or that the group that you volunteered with had made it into the newspaper, and those links can be put in to a resume. More and more now, resumes are going to be submitted as a soft copy document, and you can send in a PDF with hyperlinks, and you can include hyperlinks in your resume. Now, it's possible that they'll print them off and they won't necessarily have access to them, so I don't recommend doing that and expecting that the hyperlink is going to be the thing that tells all the information. But it can be a neat way of identifying that you've done something and giving kind of a proof of it by linking to something, embedding a hyperlink in. Using Canva is just another creative way of laying out space. You can do resume template searches and create something from that. If Word document feels like a really intimidating blank screen for you to have to start from, I do caution around using templates, because sometimes what happens is you're forced into the space management that they use, and it becomes harder to develop it and mold it as your resume grows. But that's why I say keep the bank of information in a document that's easily accessible and easily translatable, and then you can go to some of these creative outlets for how to present yourself in ways that feel right for you.
The other thing that I wanted to mention as you're talking about resume bank is the idea of LinkedIn. Nowadays, sometimes people will just ask you for the link to your LinkedIn profile. And so, the picture that you have there, I don't know how many times I've seen pictures of people where they're on LinkedIn and it's a group of friends, and I'm like, how is this about you if you don't even have a profile photo that's about you? And the world of work is changing. The pandemic has shown employers that you can't just depend on the same old. And I'm not saying that resumes are important. I believe that they are. But even some employers are looking to have conversations with you. And even if you don't have it written down, can you talk about what you have done? Right? And some employers even are not even worried about resumes. They're worried about your experiences, the things that you've done. And I think that's a big shift, because and I'm not saying don't pursue your education. That's not what I'm saying, because it makes you a subject matter expert in the area that you studied. But don't feel that someone has more access to a job because they have more education than you. You may have more real world experience that you can talk about that the employer will value. And so in today's world, it doesn't mean that it's a strikeout because you didn't finish your degree yet. because you guys are obviously still in university, right? So if you're looking for something now, sometimes it's, I am going to finish my degree. I am working on it, but I also have these 16 really fabulous things that I've done that could really make me the great employee that you're looking for. So those are things to definitely keep in mind.
Absolutely. No, and I saw something. I have an inner critic that is very, very loud. And our relationship is, kind of that on again, off again, love hate one. And so I say that only to mean that it is very easy to get feedback that you're not ready for, good enough yet, blah, 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 blah. Chatter that happens inside our brains because we've just spoken about social media. We're constantly comparing ourselves to others. Now, comparing yourself to others is a great motivator, but chances are you're looking at people and giving them a lot of credit for what they are doing, and maybe you're not giving yourself the same credit that you deserve for what you've been doing. And so really valuable to take that self-reflection and say, you know what I'm bringing is unique, and my story about what I've done and how I've done it is the only thing that's going to differentiate me from perhaps the competition, or is going to be the reason why somebody wants to work for me or wants to have me as their consultant, whatever kind of self-employment you might do in the future, is that the way you've done what you've done and your life experience is unique. And as we are moving into what they're calling 21st century skill, which heaven knows we're far enough into the 21st century, we should be catched up by now, is that who you are as the human is more and more and more and more the thing that they cannot create through artificial intelligence, and that they cannot have a robot do. And so we can ask Google for lots of information, right? So you want to show that you're bringing things that might feel a little simple compared to credentials, but really your experience that happened while you got your credential is going to be the part that's going to differentiate you, and is the part that you can give yourself some credit for as you go forward. So the act of resume writing should be one of self-reflection, self-promotion, giving yourself a little pat on the back, so that when you go into interviews or you go into any elevator pitch conversations, that you're feeling like you remember your own story and that you feel proud of describing it, and that you have figured out where those little hints of uniqueness are so that you can speak to them. And that's really what I encourage in the process. Did I miss any of the comments? No. Okay. Cameron, I'm going to I have something here that I can pull up, or I can ask you to pull it up. I wanted to show them this sample resume. Is that something that you have right there that you can make as the sharing slide? It's attached in that email. Just want to give this example because traditionally we have been taught to write resumes by people who know how to use word processors, and that might be changing. I've been in the world of resume writing for most of my career, and so admittedly, maybe you're all like, that's the only way I would have ever written a resume, or maybe this is permission to be more creative than others have led you to believe in the past. So I just want you to take a minute to peek at that. A kind of quick overview from the one screen, and then we can zoom in a little bit to see other aspects of this. This is the samples from a business expert. Right, okay. Yes, thank you, Karen. This is not a new standard. Just so that you know, it is just permission to be creative. Mine is so dull compared to this example as well. So the fact that you have one is the applause that are needed now. And here is room for invitation. This is not somebody who is just starting out at the beginning of their career either, right? This is somebody who is identifying themselves as CEO of Yahoo and Vice President of Google. So don't feel bad, feel inspired. Any other thoughts that we have when we first take a peek at this example resume? Any comment at all? You can tell me what you think is the worst idea you've ever seen. I would love to have that conversation as well. Some other thoughts. What do you notice first? Maybe that can be something that people can write in the comments. What's the first thing you notice when you look at this one-page document? And Cara, maybe you can scroll it down just a little bit so people can see up close of the bottom half as well. I like how easy it is to read. Yes. Are you reading the words? Or is your entire brain taking in a visual and reading the visual? Yeah. It does. That's a bit of fun, I think, all the way through. Yeah, the headings, great. Visuals is a communication skill that is becoming more and more valuable and is taking longer for traditional communications to catch up. Yeah, I agree. The day in my life is super interesting. If anybody has ever had a much bigger set of responsibilities than just one hat that they wear, a really interesting image that I saw once was how many career titles a mom actually has to have in order to function as a mom, and how many hours a day they would be on duty for all of those different jobs, and that if they were paid the salary value of that job, how much the cost and the price and the salary of a mom would be. So I say A Day in This Life is giving a lot of context both to her work life and her personal life. You'll notice that she is spinning, I say a she, so forgive me if that's an assumption about gender identity, but that piece around how she's spinning, or they're spinning the content, sleeping and dreaming about work on the 38th floor of the Four Seasons Hotel in San Francisco. This is not her saying, I'm lazy and sleep a lot. She's finding a creative way of telling people about her visions and her dreams. So when we see the big picture and we're intrigued, then we can start to zone in, and we want to start reading some of the nuances. And then when we read the little nuanced details, she is continuing to offer that creative element of interest and surprise. What we want to do when we're being creative in our expressions is that we have really concrete value to back it up. We don't want to make up a creative story and then have our resume be fiction, right? So that's not the message. It's that you would be able to speak to anything that you're putting on your resume with experiential examples, references, etc. And you can actually start to put some of the narrative behind that and tell some of the where it came from, parts of the story, by writing a cover letter, having a conversation, calling a potential employer and asking about a job before you even submit a resume, building into that interpersonal relationship skills as well, so that the whole story about who you are is a much broader package than just the one-page document. So yes, I offer that as one insight. Maybe we can scroll to just, or like zoom out just so that you can see that full picture. Any other thoughts on this you'd like to bring to attention, ask questions about, or offer as curiosities? Do you think that there's any places where this kind of a resume wouldn't work? I like the most proud of, yeah. Right? This is a way of starting to say the most proud of can be hard things that you overcame, right? She talks about courage. And it's a way of having some of that brag about myself from a place that feels most authentic to you, right? So you can use the word proud if that's a good, if that feel good word for you. But that could be like that highlight section, prime real estate, where you know it's going to get the attention right away. Any other reflections on this? There's a lot that can be unpacked by just looking at one other person's example. So let's go on. Just showing an example of perhaps a newer perspective on format for resume. I will give you one caution that is worth checking in when you go to apply somewhere, is that if there is a AI program, we used to call them like kind of that spider reader that would first scan through resumes to get them through to a human to look at. So if you're having to apply online, if we're too short on the experience description, could that be a negative in the sense that the employer may not get the picture of what we have really done? Yeah. I think that you've kind of spoken to the most important part of how to choose what to include, is that in the description, ask yourself, what picture does this employer need to hear and see as I start to explain something? So I can tell a description about the kind of work experience that I've had, but every job I've ever done has had nuances about it that I would tailor and describe differently depending on what work I hope that an employer would see the transferability of that to, right? So if I was going into work and all of a sudden I was going to be a, I don't know, circus attendant. So my new job is to work at a circus, and I have had all of my current life experiences up till now. I could go through my life experiences in different work background, working in education, working in community, working as a mom, you know, working as a wife, working with junior achievement, working with NSCC, and I would pick out totally different things if I wanted to start to talk about why I would be good as a circus director, right? So everything that we've done has transferable skills in it. Know who you're trying to tell the story to, and then create the description that serves them. Even under work experiences, even though the work I have done, in some ways, I said how good, how much, and why. When I can put context to it, then it makes it relevant to the employer that's reading it now. So if I just said, provided customer service, how do they know what to do with that piece of information, right? So if I add how good, how much, or why, I could say, provided 5-star rated customer service in a fast-paced, not-for-profit organization, providing complex case management to diverse groups of community members. Okay, maybe my next bullet under that is able to take chaotic environments with lots of moving parts and various demands and provide a seamless service. Now we're starting to see how these could translate into running a circus. right? So you can start to pick how you hone and describe what it is that you've done to serve the job that you are applying to. So I really can't stress enough the importance of having the bank of all the things you've ever done. And every time you nuance one of those sentences and you get a really good sentence that describes you in this really nice way, keep that in your bank too. Even if the next time you describe it differently for a future job, right? Then you can start to keep copies of each resume that you've used and honed. And you can remember, oh yeah, when I applied for that job, I did try to describe myself as how I could be a good zookeeper. So I can probably use some of the notes that I put on that one to help with this job for the circus. Obviously, these are silly examples, but just trying to help you see that they can be used anywhere you go. Or not silly. Some of you might be serious. Experts. Okay. Good. I'm glad that's helpful. All right. This will be in that package that's coming to you, so you can unpack this and play with it. I hope that it offers inspiration. If nothing else, do some internet searches for, you know, creative resume templates and formats, and just look to see what's possible and then decide what suits you. I was going to say about those spider readers, if you put things in certain contexts, you know, just to make sure that if you're putting things and relying on an icon to tell the whole story, that icon might not translate into description for AI to read it if that's the first pass that it has to go through. Usually the rule of thumb that I have tried to live by, this helps living in rural Nova Scotia, there is a who you know and a human contact element that is helpful when you are applying for work or you're looking to be in the professional scene. I always follow the rule of thumb that if you have applied by the way that they have asked, you've checked that box, and therefore you could also submit your resume or application in another format. So follow their rule and also. So I have followed up in places where I've had to apply for jobs through Career Beacon or an online application process by also emailing the HR and saying, I've submitted my resume. Sometimes I'm able to say, thank you for our previous conversation about the job. And I just wanted you to have a copy of my application as well, so that you know that it's come through in its proper format. You know, kind of use an excuse like that. So another tip of the trade. So as a person with ADD and dyslexia, having so many seems overwhelming to have on one resume.
Like, how do you keep it all together or keep them all separate? Is there a way to just make them all clearer? Because getting out one resume was ridiculously hard. So trying to tailor it for 5 different fields or 3 different fields, that just seems even more overwhelming. And how do you keep them separate but cohesive? Or do they need to be cohesive?
You're never going to have to submit 5 resumes to one person. So first of all, yay you, because you have a resume and it is so hard. And so the fact that you have one resume means that you have done so well. And I had one resume, 4 years. And so you have done good. I also have dyslexia and ADHD. So I get the feels. And what I would say is you have your bank resume now. Make a folder in a place that's always yours, a cloud that you won't forget exists. Email them to yourself in an email address that never changes, and create a folder on your so that all of the things stay in an email folder some way, so that when you're anywhere, you can, you know, search your inbox for resumes and you're going to be able to find what you're looking for. Keep your bank resume and keep a second copy. So you've got 2 copies now. You have the one that you submitted or the one that you just made for a final product. Make a second copy and call it bank. Now, when something else comes up, just go in and just add to the bank resume. The bank resume does not need to hold format. It does not need to stay on 1 page, 2 pages, 10 pages. It's so that you have it as other things that come up that you think, oh my gracious, I'm never going to remember that I got that certificate, or I'm not going to remember that I did that thing, but it's kind of good that I did it. I should write it down so I don't forget. And then the next time you go to write a resume and apply to something, you'll be able to say, well, the last time I applied something similar, I'm going to pull up the old resume that I used for my last application. Do I need to tweak it at all to make it better for the next application that I'm submitting something to? And maybe you'll say, you know what, they're very similar jobs. I'm going to change the objective line. I see that being asked about this. You know, maybe you use that as your life philosophy. Like, is the philosophy tweaked with a little bit of language so that that's your objective? Every objective is to get a job. So you don't need an objective that says that, right? You need an objective that says, this resume is being used to get employment, full-time or part-time, permanent or impermanent, now and into the future, right? Like that's what resumes are for. But an objective that says the kind of work that I'm passionate about is to work in a place where I have the opportunity to contribute in this way, contribute to this kind of work, bring this kind of skill. I would recommend using objective in that way instead. And a cover letter can sometimes be all you need. Carolyn, going back to your question, sometimes one industry without a lot of time passing and change to your content, one resume is going to be tailored already because you put it into your career direction. It might simply be that you tailor cover letters to better match what it is that are some of the key points an employer is asking for from their job ad. Does that help answer your questions? Is there any other questions you want to put out there? Okay. Perfect. So I do have an example of cover letters. A little bit of discussion about cover letters. Bless you. So in the resources that we're gonna send you, somebody's gonna send you. Thank you very much to the humans that are doing that. There is a piece called. Maybe I'll share this one. Will I be able to take over from you? Yeah. Awesome. All right. So who has been in the habit of writing a cover letter? Is that something that people have had to do? As academics now, working through your post-secondary education, my guess is that you have gotten lots of practice with formal writing. What's sometimes nice about cover letters, which admittedly can be basically the content that you would put in the body of an email that you would send, right? So it's just the kind of formalizing that approach, is that as cool and beautiful as that example of a resume might be, you might not feel like you get to actually tell somebody, I want to work for you. I like the kind of work you do. And so it's helpful when you apply for something that you're excited about. This isn't necessarily what you're going to do if you're hitting the pavement and you're going to drop resumes off at every fast food establishment or every restaurant. Would you need this? But if you are tailoring an application to a professional position, then you want to write a cover letter. And there are sections of cover letters that can stay the same. So you don't necessarily have to rewrite a letter every time, but you may feel like there are aspects of a letter that you want to tailor uniquely to the job you're posting, that you saw posted and that you're applying for. So the format and some hints and clues are here in this document that you're going to have, so you can look at it for a little bit of a template and some guidance for anybody that feels that that would be helpful to them. And what I wanted to show you, because you're going to get all of this, is there's also some examples. It's an activity that we're not going to do together, but you have it so that you can go through it yourself, is looking at an example of a job posting and seeing what information they're telling you so that you can use it as clues for that tailoring. So when you see a job ad posted, I recommend that you read through it. And I'm a visual person, which might have been obvious already. So I go through and I actually highlight things. I highlight things that are yellow and I highlight whatever color I've got, right? Doesn't matter, but highlight the things you think like, oh, I'm going to say that I've got this. Like they're saying they want this, right? So maybe I see, I'm just taking this randomly. A specific focus on budget management will be required in order to track all revenue and expenses associated with the operation of a provincial team program. So there's a lot packed into that one sentence in this job ad, right? So budget management, tracking revenue and expenses, and operations of a provincial team. So I'm hearing that it is, you know, across large region, that there's lots of people, that the budget money management skills are important, and that really there's also this influence of that associated to things running smoothly. And maybe I'm going to take that, I'm going to say, oh my gosh, I've got a great example about how I can make reference to that. But they've also given me buzzwords that they use to describe what they want. So even though I might be going back to Paula's example about the time when I was cutting grass for the entire neighborhood, and that's actually how I have budget management skills, and that I ended up having to also, you know, recruit my friend to help me because we ended up being asked if we could do extra lawns in the other neighborhood. And so that's where I'm going with my example. This gives me the language about how to tell them about it. And so I might say that when I'm writing my resume and my cover letter to this employer, that I frame it up as you'll see from the examples on my resume, I have budget management experience and have dealt with tracking revenue and expenses associated with the operations of a large project, right? Or of a team project. And that might be how you describe it. And then on the resume, there's going to be proof that you ran a small business for 3 summers or whatever you're going to use to describe your lawn mowing activities. So just a little clue through that about how you might pull out things that you're going to be able to speak to and their language and how you might be able to use that. Also, when you're looking at job ads, you don't have to know how to do everything in order to apply. Okay, there's a lot of people out there with a lot more confidence, with no intentions of getting better at what they're doing, who aren't doing the work as well as you'll do it. So trust that. Trust yourself that if you're hesitating on whether or not you know enough, because there's that one qualification that you don't have, chances are your desire to do well and your desire for personal growth is so strong that that's going to overplay the fact that you don't have that one qualification. So point that out when you're applying. It's like an 80-20 rule. If you can say you can do 80% of the job or have 80% of the qualifications, apply. Maybe even less if you have confidence in doing so, but definitely don't feel like you have to have every single one of them. This is their dream list, remember, right? When an employer posts a job ad, that's their dream list, and they're going to negotiate and find something in the middle. So So that's a little bit about how to see the job ads and also kind of the cover letters that might be associated with them as you go along. So that is.
I have a question. So I've been asked this before. So there's some jobs now where career jobs, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah, yeah.
where, oh, you need a college degree, right? You have everything that they've asked for, except that. And it's an online process. You know, people are, well, how do I get around that? And I wonder, because I always wonder, what do I tell people, you know, because this part that you're talking about, you know, you say if you have 80%, 90% of what they want, except that, like, I really think that I was talking about the fact that there is a shift in the way people hire, but many institutions are still steeped in, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a degree, but how do you get around that when your life experience, you know, some students are mature students. They're not to the stage yet where they have a degree. They're just restarting, but their lived experience is so much. And just because they don't have that degree, you know, they can't, how do you break through?
Great question. And I do hope that there is a shift, because your life experience is a degree from the university, as I like to put it, right? Like the universe and life as a school has taught you what you learned and what you know. So I don't know if you'll get away with doing that when you have to like check, do I have a university degree? Like check, yes, the universe gave me my degree in life experience. But I'm not sure if that'll fly. You'll have to put, you know, put my name on that as like whose certificate, who gave you that certificate. But I think that there is a shift, and sometimes it comes, well, I mean, it always comes back to the narrative. And like you were saying, that the value of just the piece of paper is losing the weight that it once had. It's because we inflate the value of something to the point where it's not, the supply and demand issue gets lost, right? So when we talk about inflation of money, where money doesn't have the same value as it once did because we keep making more money, inventing more money, then the same can be true about the inflation of education. And so you can find that in the fact that people have undergrads but don't have the careers that they thought would be associated to those undergrads, because just marketing the undergrad itself is what they might use the term a dime a dozen. There's lots of people with those credentials, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the thing that makes them good at doing the job. And that's becoming more and more acknowledged. And like you said, sometimes it's still archaic in getting through the hiring process. And so if there is any way, and we can talk about creative ways to do that, to find human contact within the context of the organizations that you really want to work in, the industries, the circles, the circuits, please start that process. It can be through LinkedIn. It can be through LinkedIn, linking to the people who know the people who accept your request for being connected, right? And moving into circuits with people, and then asking about how the employer themselves values that standard. So in the Career Beacon example, there are some hard stops where they put qualification requirements in the job posting, and automatically, in order to proceed with the application on Career Beacon, you have to be able to check whether or not you have the qualifications that are being asked for. And sometimes they word it as or equivalent, in which case check yes, or equivalent, like I have this or equivalent. And that can be enough to get through. You're going to explain yourself. Your resume is going to explain yourself when you get there. So that can be one strategy. Almost always, there's somebody in charge of hiring that is also going to be able to respond to applicants who are looking for more information about the job before the deadline for applying. And so as an employer, and having worked in various size organizations, I'm always happy to talk to somebody who reaches out with curiosity. So you can reach out to the employer and say, I'd like to ask for a full job description of that position that I see posted. Or you can reach out and contact the business and ask for the hire, like the HR department, ask for somebody within the context that you think you know, and say, who could I speak to who's already doing the job? So even if they're not through HR, you can just go in and talk to people that are already doing the job, ask them for insights about it. Go to, maybe you want to apply for an example from Waitress for market research. Oh, sorry, do I need to read this story? If I want to switch from one industry to another, how should I write my resume, and should I include the experience I did in my previous industry, and will it help me apply for jobs in a new industry? From Waitress to market researcher. Great, okay. Thank you for that example. This would be a sample like market researcher. If you think that that's something that needs a certain qualification, you can go and ask about market research as informational interviewing with other market researchers who already are doing the work, because colleagues don't see you as a threat. And a colleague is not giving you a leg up by talking to you, even though there's a job posting. So find somebody who's doing the work and ask them for insights about how the employer works or what kinds of things they're really looking for. That can be one strategy to overcome some of those challenges related to, do I really need to have that qualification in order to get through the hiring process? I always recommend applying anyway. Like, even if you have to say no, find out, because it's super annoying to go through Career Beacon as one example and get to the point where you're being asked, and if you say no, it says, sorry, you can't apply. Like, that's infuriating. And you're so far in, and if you're like me, you're procrastinating, so it's like 2 minutes till the deadline, right? That sucks. Set up your profile in Career Beacon so that when you see something you want to apply to, you can do it quickly. Do that other hard work ahead of time. You can put in sample resumes and things too. Get close. Go in and just try to apply to a job you don't qualify for. Just go in and test it so that you know what the process looks like. See what happens if you say no to one of those qualifiers. Does it still let you submit? Because what can happen on the other end that you don't know about is that they're making two pools. They're making a pool of resumes that came through that was able to check yes to everything. And they're also making a pool of those that weren't able to check yes to everything. And if they don't get the qualified applicants from the pool that said yes to everything, they're going to look at that second pool and they're going to look for detail there. So that can be part of it. And calling and asking questions in industries and employers that you want to work with before you're currently applying gives you a lot more open door access to learning from them. And most of them are glad to know that somebody wants to work for them, especially in the current market. So you have a lot of leverage right now to be contacting places. There is no risk on the table for you, right? You're just saying, I'm currently a post-secondary student and I'm interested in working in this line of work. I'd love to set up 15 minutes of your time. Who knows how much time, maybe a half hour, maybe an hour. I'd love to set up some time with you to discuss what we call an informational interview. I'd like to discuss with you about some aspects of the line of work and how best to prepare myself for my future in that industry. And I would say you go applying through the employers that you want to work with, real humans. I always say real humans are the best way through. So in the question about like HR reps, if you know the HR rep, yes. But if you want to work in market research, and that means that you want to work for a particular employer, you might actually get a lot of leverage by talking to the frontline administration and asking them. Build relationship with them. They know the whole circuit. They know the whole organization. They know how everybody's working. And they might say, oh, don't talk to our HR person. Like they don't like having those conversations, but you could talk to this really awesome teammate on the research team who would love to chat with you about that. So if you can get the chance to find those lines, I would recommend it. And do it when there's nothing on the table, right? Do it before there's any job postings. And that way it's non-threatening on either end. You're just curious. And people are going to remember you for that. So specifically, I think if you, just to give you a little bit of context from your question about being waitress to market researcher, what I know about market research is you're trying to figure out what people want and need, what's selling, what's working, right? Any aspects of that? Are you not constantly doing market research while you're a waitress to meet the needs of the people that are coming in as patrons? So absolutely, transfer those skills, those interpersonal skills that are going to help. You know how to read a room, you know how to recognize people's interests, you've watched trends and patterns in preferences, any aspect from those job placement, job ads to get you started. Also, don't wait for job ads locally, right? So go look at job ads, go search job ads internationally or nationally and see a sample of a resume of job ads that are out there right now so that you know the kinds of things they're asking for. Start imagining how you would translate it. Don't wait for jobs to be posted. Don't wait. You can start filling your LinkedIn with all the right words. People will be asking for you. All right. Tell me what I didn't tell you. Tell me what questions you still have so that we can make the most of the last 2 minutes of our time together. Is that right? I'm on track for time that we're going to be done at 11 in theory? Yeah. Okay, perfect. Any questions? There is more in your resources. Glad to hear this is recorded. Please feel free to reach back to me at any time if I can be helpful to you. Maybe I can ask that information, just that my email is still there when you forward it so that people know that they can contact me by email.
Yes, that will be included in our final email when I send out my evaluation.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Good. Yeah, any other questions or anything else? I'm so happy to spend the time with you. I hope that it was valuable to you. I love the topic and I am so happy to see y'all going forward.
Thank you so much for being here, Julianne, and thank you, students. I really don't know what happened today. I think it might have been a combination of, you know, the weather, the storms, and the fact that we had to change the dates around because of so many cancellations. So students might have had something else scheduled today, but business for the education. So the business, the learning passport, Kira, is completely different from what Juliana and I are talking about. So the evaluation is for the general program that you've gone through for 6 weeks. To let us know if it's something that was valuable to you, how did it help you? The learning passport, you know, you're filling out to get your credits through the business department, but not all students that are here are taking learning passport because they're not students from the business department. So anything you receive from me will come from natalie.frederick.wilson@msvu.ca. So that will come to you next week, including Juliana's information that she sent out as well as the links, all the YouTube links for all 6 of the sessions when I receive it from JA. But thanks, guys. Thank you so much to JA, and we appreciate that you've shown up every week. And thank you so much for participating. If you have any other questions, you know where to find me. You get emails from me all the time. So have a great day, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.